guys? I'm Cassie.
I'm Sara.
And in this week's episode, we're talking about two different stories, the Whaley House and the story of H.H. Holmes. The reason we're doing it this way is because these stories are not long enough on their own, so we decided to combine them and make them one.
It's like a little double feature for y'all.
So enjoy.
While the story of the Whaley House's origins may seem as simple and innocent as any family history, the truth is, many believe this home was destined to be haunted before it was even built. The property was the site of one of the town's most famous public executions, that of the hanging of the infamous thief Yankee Jim Robinson. But Thomas Whaley was not daunted by this fact, and in 1855 purchased the land and began construction of what would be his family home. Thomas, his wife Anna, and their 3 children moved into the house in 1857 and within a few months opened a general store inside the residence. It wasn't long after the Whaley family moved into the home that sadness and despair were thrust upon them. First, their young son Thomas, who was only 18 months old, died of scarlet fever inside the house. Then, a few months later, a fire raged within the home, destroying the general store. Soon after, Thomas decided to move the family to San Francisco. Several years later, in 1868, the Whaley family, which now included Thomas, his wife, and their 5 children, returned to the home. Several years later, 2 of the Whaley daughters got married inside the home. Violet, the younger of the 2, married a man named George, and just 2 weeks into the marriage, she awoke one morning during their extended honeymoon to find that her husband had left. It turned out George was a con artist who only married Violet in the hopes of securing some of the Whaley family fortunes upon their marriage. When this didn't come to fruition, he bolted, leaving Violet alone and beside herself. She was so wrought with depression that she decided she could not live with the shame and shot herself in the chest on August 18, 1885.
Thomas Whaley bought some land and didn't care that someone was executed on it.
Yeah, so he bought this land, built a home, and then eventually they moved out, right?
Yeah.
Then, years later, they somehow conveniently got the same house, which I'm not sure how that works.
I don't think they ever sold it. I think they just I think maybe they were making repairs to it.
Oh, okay.
So they could eventually move back sometime when maybe they were ready to come back because their 18-month-old died of scarlet fever.
Yeah. They have a lot going on in the family. So the youngest son died. The fire burnt. I don't think it burnt it down, but it destroyed it.
Yeah.
And the general store, right? And then the youngest daughter, or one of the daughters,
the youngest daughter,
married a man, and he was just a con artist just for the dude. Could you imagine? The family has a curse on them almost.
Well, no. In the beginning, it said it was believed, even before the house was built, it was destined to be haunted and cursed.
True. Yeah, so maybe just them being there was kind of
Jim Robinson. He's since I died,
everyone else is gonna have bad things happen to them.
I'm just gonna be everybody.
Over the years, many descendants of the Whaley family lived and died in the house, including Thomas, Anna, and their children Lillian, Thomas, Violet, and Francis. During its restoration periods, which took place several different times throughout the home's history, workers and visitors began to notice strange and mysterious sounds, sights, aromas, and encounters. The first and most well-known ghost that lingered within the house and on the grounds was that of Yankee Jim Robinson, as he had died right on the spot where the home was built. The infamous criminal made eerie noises, loud footsteps, and left disembodied footprints, continually scaring Whaley family members throughout their lifetimes. It also doesn't help that the house was built upon an old cemetery, and while the Whaleys were living there, they heard footsteps in the house, with passerbys corroborating the Whaleys' claims by reporting apparitions in the home's windows from the streets. Baby Thomas, who had been the first in the family to pass away, had always stayed close by, as reported by many who have visited the home. They could hear tiny footsteps, the sounds of him crying, even giggling when no one was in sight. Others report seeing a young woman lingering on the second floor of the house, believed to be poor Violet, still consumed with sorrow. She seems to stay close to the second floor, where she spent much of her time after her divorce before she committed suicide. It is said that areas within the home had become quite cold, and her presence is felt throughout. Thomas, Anna, and several other spirits have also been felt within the home, on the stairwells, and on the property. Many have seen Thomas dressed in his frock, coat and a top hat standing at the top of the stairs. Others say they could smell the aroma of French perfume, Anna's signature scent. Lights turning on and off by themselves, crystals in the music room's lamps swinging without any prompt are all signs that the Whaley House still belongs to many who called it home over the years. Although no one has lived in the house since 1953, the spirits of the dead are still there, waiting for visitors. Workers on site and guests who've toured the house tell accounts of many unusual and spooky encounters. Some say they've seen a figure looking out the upstairs window long after the house has been closed for the day. Others have seen curtains moving even though all the windows in the home have been sealed shut. The sounds of children running up and down the stairs can be heard without anyone being seen. Footsteps, cold spots, the appearance and disappearance of shadows have always been seen, felt, and heard by guests.
Well, there's been a lot of people that have visited the Whaley House, and I guess it's pretty haunted. Like, the way that this sounds probably doesn't make it sound like it's super haunted, but I'm pretty sure it is.
It's like, yeah, I think it was like...
It's like one of the most
haunted houses, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like one of the most haunted, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think. Baby Thomas. Dude, that's a no.
Hearing his little footsteps, hearing his little giggles, his crying.
Could you imagine if you heard a little baby giggling?
Oh, I'd be out of there so fast.
No.
And that's the creepiest thing, I think.
Yeah.
Hearing a baby giggle.
I don't like children ghosts. Those freak me right out. Like little kids, like the laughing of little kids. No. And then we also have Violet, who they think they see upstairs in like the second story window, just kind of like
sad and depressed, because that's where she spent her time after her divorce.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that there's other ghosts besides like within the Whaley family and Jim Robinson, but like we said, it's a pretty haunted place.
Yeah.
People who go there, who are visiting, workers who are there, they're all like, yeah, things go on nonstop at this place. But now we have the story of H.H. Holmes that we're going to talk about. So let's get into that.
Strap yourselves in, my friends.
H.H. Holmes was born Herman Webster Mudgett on May 16, 1861 in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. He was born into a wealthy family and showed signs of high intelligence from an early age. Always interested in medicine, he allegedly trapped animals and performed surgery on them. Some accounts of his life even suggested that he killed a childhood playmate. Mudgett attended medical school at the University of Michigan, where he was a mediocre student and he stole corpses and used them to make false insurance claims. Mudgett may have used the bodies for experiments as well. In 1885, Mudgett moved to Chicago, Illinois. He soon found work in a pharmacy using his now infamous alias, Dr. Henry H. Holmes. He eventually took over the business and was later rumored to have killed its original owner. Holmes had a 3-story building constructed nearby, creating an elaborate house of horrors. The upper floors contained his living quarters and many small rooms where he tortured and killed his victims. There were also trapdoors and chutes that enabled him to move the bodies down to the basement where he could burn the remains in a kiln or dispose of them in other ways. During the 1893 Columbian Exposition, Holmes opened up his home as a hotel for visitors. Unfortunately, many guests did not survive in what became known as the Murder Castle. Many of these victims, no one knows for certain the total number, were women who were seduced, swindled, and then killed. Holmes had a habit of getting engaged to a woman only for his fiancée to suddenly disappear. Other victims were lured there by the offer of employment. Holmes also required his employees to carry life insurance policies naming him as beneficiary so that he could collect money after he killed them. He sold the bodies of many of his victims to local medical schools.
He was born into a wealthy family and he was really intelligent.
Then he decided, oh, I'm interested in medicine. I'm going to cut up animals.
And possibly kill one of my playmates.
Which, that's pretty crazy. Okay.
Have you noticed though that like serial killers, like, okay, they may not be born into a wealthy family, but they're like super smart.
Yeah,
like
I think
that's
the
like
majority of them are.
That's like the first sign, like, oh, super intelligent. You're
Watch
gonna
out for that one.
People.
Well, maybe not necessarily, but yeah, I get what you mean. Like a lot of them are very well. They have to be smart. Like if they're gonna get away with all of this stuff. Yeah, and then he goes on to basically creating his house that he then turned into a hotel.
Murder Castle.
It's literally like Sweeney Todd. Right? Is that what it is?
Sweeney Todd?
Yeah, Sweeney Todd. You know the one where he's got like a barber shop? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he cuts people and then he
puts them down the chute so like the lady can cook them into like little meat pies.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. So he turned his home into a hotel, became known as Murder Castle. He would literally like trap mostly women, I think, is what it was.
He would like lure them in.
Yeah, by seducing them, or like he would get engaged to them and they would magically disappear. I can't believe nobody like followed up on that. It was like, hey, that's a little weird.
You're getting engaged to all these women, and
their fiancés do that.
Oh, I had 10 and they just up and left.
Yeah, right? That's suspicious.
And if he's not seducing them, he'll be like, you want a job? But you gotta have life insurance, and I gotta be your beneficiary. So when you die,
I can kill you.
I get whatever you're worth.
He was pretty smart, obviously.
Yeah,
that's good thinking.
In 1893, Holmes was arrested for insurance fraud after a fire at his home, but he was soon released. He then concocted a scheme with his partner to defraud an insurance company by faking his partner's death. After his partner purchased a $10,000 life insurance policy, he and Holmes traveled to Colorado, Missouri, New York, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Texas, where they committed other acts of fraud. Returning to Missouri, Holmes was arrested for fraud and briefly jailed in St. Louis. While in jail, he met Marianne Hedgepeth, a career criminal who agreed to help Holmes in the insurance scheme with his partner. After his release from jail, Holmes traveled to Philadelphia and killed his partner. He then convinced his partner's widow, who had been aware of her husband's involvement in the insurance scheme, that her husband was still alive, later giving her $500 of the money he collected. Worried that some of his partner's 5 children might alert the authorities, Holmes killed 3 of them. Insurance investigators were alerted to the fraud by Hedgepeth, and Holmes was arrested in Boston, Massachusetts in 1894. He was then tried in Philadelphia for the murder of his partner and was sentenced to death by hanging. Holmes confessed to 27 murders. He later increased the total to more than 130, though some researchers have suggested that the real number exceeded 200. Holmes sold his story to the Hearst Corporation for $10,000.
Holmes is wild.
Yes,
this guy.
Wild.
He killed his partner, went to the widow and was like, oh, he's still alive.
Let me give me some money and then I'll give you $500 of what I get.
And then to like top it all off, he's like, he's got 5 children. I'm gonna take out 3 of them just to be sure
that they don't say anything. 3 of his children.
In the end, he was arrested
and
sentenced to death by hanging.
And you know, before he got hanged or hung?
Hanged or hung?
I don't know.
I would say hung, but
he confessed to 27 murders, but then increased to 130. So 27 to 130.
That's a huge jump. But again, Sweeney Todd vibes.
And then researchers are like, no, we think it's more than 200.
That's the thing, like no one really knows then. If he went from 27 all the way to 130, and then they bumped up to 200, like no one actually knows how many people he killed. That's a lot of people.
Oh my God. Could you imagine just like, okay, so he's got like his 3-story murder castle. So his top one is his living quarters.
Yeah.
Then the middle one is like basically rooms. And then the bottom one is his pit of hell.
Or is it the basement?
The basement. I'm calling it the pit of hell because that's where he drops the bodies. Could you imagine if he just drops bodies and then like they're like, okay, they check the building. The whole floor is just covered in like
that's probably where they like amped up the number because they went and investigated. But that's what I'm saying. That's crazy. Like when he had his murder castle, we don't know how many people he actually killed there. Like it could have been hundreds. I'm glad that we got to talk about these because I think at least for the Whaley House, like it's a very big. It's a big thing, even though the story wasn't super long. And I feel like H.H. Holmes is pretty popular too, isn't he? Even though the story wasn't very long, like that's pretty crazy. And I would love to go to the Whaley House eventually.
Oh yeah.
So I think like I'm glad that we got to actually talk about it and kind of like voice our opinions on it because I want to be able to go there.
Yeah. So eventually maybe we could like film our experience.
I wonder if we could go to the murder castle. I wonder if it still exists.
We'll have
Make sure you let us know down below if you like these videos, if you like that we combine 2 into 1, because there will be more in the future that we'll probably want to do this to, because we don't want to not give you guys the stories on things just because they're short. So if you like it, let us know and we will continue to do it.
If you want to see more videos like one of these, like the Whaley House or H.H. Holmes, I'll put a video right here, whatever I feel like.
We will see you guys next